One of the things about Imam al-Ghazali is that he went through what in modern parlance you would call an existential crisis. He had reached the pinnacle of his profession. He was a professor, and he came from a very humble background, and like many people from humble backgrounds who get into positions of great power and authority, they have a very negative influence on them. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton's axiom. But one of the things that he said was that, and he said that تعلمت العلم لغير الله فأبى إلا أن يكون لله. I learned knowledge for other than the sake of Allah, but knowledge refused to be for other than the sake of Allah. At about the age of 38, he was born in 450, so this would be around 488. He began to read pretty seriously in the books of what are called Kutub al-Qawm. These are the books. Al-Qawm are the people that are referred to in the hadith, hum al-qawm la yashqa bihim jilisuhum. They're the folk, the qawm, who even the people that just sit with them and aren't from them, but they just sit with them, they get sa'ada, they find happiness. So just being in their company is enough. And traditionally, those people were the people of tazkiyah, of ihsan, people of the maqam of ihsan. And these are all of the great ulama are in this category, whether it's Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, Imam Abu Thawr, Imam al-Layth, Ibn Wahbin, Imam al-Bukhari, all of them are in that category. They're all from the Qawm. But there was a group of them who took it upon themselves to really articulate the whole process of tazkiyah. And they wrote books about this. The early books were written by people like Imam al-Muhasibi, who was praised by Imam Ahmad. And he was one of the early people that codified some of the ideas. In the same way that you have grammar, you did not have any grammar before Abu Aswad al-Du'ali. There was no Arabic grammar. Arabs spoke grammatically correct language because their language had reached the pinnacle at the time of the Prophet, which is a miracle in and of itself, that the Quran comes at the point. I mean, there's a reason why Shakespeare, and it's an odious analogy, there's a reason why Shakespeare shows up at the point where the English language reaches its pinnacle. Right? So we could not produce a Shakespeare today. It just wouldn't be possible because of the very corruption of the English language. It's become a far less vehicle for eloquence than it was at his time. And that's why if you looked, all those playwrights were around at that time. None of them obviously excelled like he did, but they were all there. In the same way, you could not create the poets of the 7th century today in the Arabic language. You couldn't. And the Arab poets were like the playwrights of Elizabethan English. They were literally at the pinnacle of the Arabic language. So the Quran comes at that time. Now, isn't it interesting that the King James Bible comes right at that time also, right? Which has not been surpassed in its eloquence. So the grammar came because Abu Aswad al-Du'ali was with his daughter, and she said, "Ma ahsan as-sama'i ya abati. Ma ahsan as-sama'i ya abati." And he said, "An-nujum." And she said, "La la la qasadtu at-ta'ajjub." You know, like she said, "Ma ahsan as-sama'i ya abati," and she made the idafa construct. And what she meant to say was, "Ma ahsan as-sama'a ya abati." Because if it was mansub, it would be mansub because of ta'ajjub, but she made it majroor. These weren't terms that they even knew. She made it majroor and turned it into a istifham, a question. The ma there becomes mad istifhamiyya, right? And so Abu al-Aswad al-Dawali is like horrified that his daughter made this mistake. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, because people became Muslim from the Persians and from the Africans, and so when they came in, they weren't learning the Arabic at the same level. But Sayyidina Umar once saw some people practicing archery, and he said, "Sawibu isabatukum," because they were missing the target. So he said, "Get the target correct." And they said, "Nahnu mubtadi'een, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen." And he said, "Wallahi inna khata'akum fi lahnikum ashaddu alayya min khata'ikum fi rami." That your grammatical mistakes harder on me than your mistakes with the arrows. And they're related. So because they should have said nahnu mubtadi'un, and then it has mubtada and khabar, but instead they put it mansub bil ikhtisas, but then there's nothing to follow it. So Abu Aswad al-Du'ali went to Imam Ali and he said, "Yalhanu abna'una," our children are beginning to speak grammatically incorrect Arabic. And Sayyidina Ali says, "Dawwan lahum al-Arabiyyata wabda huna. العربية تنقسم إلى اسم وفعل وحرف فنحو هذا النحو." So Sayyidina Ali said to him, "Write down the rules of Arabic for them." And he said, and start here. Arabic's divided into 3 types of words: nouns, and ism is more, it's any substantive, like it includes adjectives, and so ism is not a noun per se in Arabic. It includes pronouns and nouns and adjectives. And then he said fi'lun, which is a verb, and then harfun, which is the articles, the prepositions. And then he said, and go this way. فَنْحُ هَذَا النَّحْوُ. So that's where we got the word nahu, grammar, from Sayyidina Ali. So that begins grammar. So they learned grammar, and grammar enabled the Ajam, and the Ajam actually surpassed the Arabs. They actually become the carriers of the Arabic language. You look at all the great grammarians, they were all Persians. They become the great grammarians of Islam. So if you say that grammar is a bid'ah, it's a bid'ah daruriyah, it's a necessary bid'ah. It's wajibah, because it's the only way the language will be preserved. But Sayyidina Umar didn't know the fa'il and the maf'ul and the majroor. He didn't know these things. He didn't know an-nasbu bil-qat'i, bin-naz' al-khafid. He didn't know any of these terms, but he knew the language, and he spoke perfect Arabic, and he could understand the Quran. He knew when Allah says la ilaha, and the la there is nafi lil jins, and that's why ilaha is mansub. He knew what that meant. That it means there's no God. Illallah, istithna, he knew what that meant. Illallahu. So they understood that by their fitrah. So it becomes necessary though. And in the same way, the tazkiyah of the Sahaba was bil fitrah. They read the Quran, they understood the Quran, they were in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. He was purifying them, he was making do it. Yuzakkihim. He was giving them qad aflaha man zakkaha. And there's a khilaf about that, whether the zakah is God or it's the person out of his own effort. But there's mukhlis and mukhlas in the Quran. So you need both. You need the tazkiyah of God, which is the tawfiq, and you need your own energy to do the tazkiyah. So these scholars began to write about tazkiyah. Imam al-Muhasibi introduced the idea of khawatir, that there's 4 kinds of thoughts. So he differentiated between the thought process of the human being. He said there's khatar rabbani, khatar malakani, khatar nafsani, and khatar shaitani. So any thought that comes to your mind is from one of these 4 sources. In reality, all of consciousness is from God. But Allah created a world of asbab. So he has angels that work on his behalf. So the Rabbani thought is a powerful positive thought that you can't disobey. It's the thought that made you fast Ramadan this year and made you just pray Maghrib. These are the Rabbani thoughts that come, that you can't disobey them. The Malakani is the one that got you to do the Sunnah after the... It's a lighter. It's something you could take it or leave it, but it's better to take it. The Nafsani is the one that told you, I'm tired, I'm not going to do the Sunnah now. And then the Shaitani was the one that stopped people from praying at all out there. So these are the different types of thoughts that people have. And Muhasibi put that down. And then you had Abu Talib al-Makki, who wrote Qut al-Qulub, the nourishment of the hearts, and talked about the maqamat, identified 9 maqams. The Christians have 3 theological virtues, the Muslims have 9 theological virtues. And so Imam al-Ghazali, he began to read these books and he was deeply distressed, because what he was realizing was all of the things that they were talking about that were negative, he could see in himself. And so this is the beginning of his crises. But he was also a very prestigious scholar. He's 38, he's at the 40, I mean that's the peak. The irhasat of the Prophet began at about 38. I mean that's really when the human being, Aristotle said 49 is the peak. He was 49 at the time he said it, right? But in our tradition, 40 is the peak. I mean, that's really at the point where you're at the peak, because you've got the quwwah of the youth and the wisdom of age. And so that is really, and then some will say 50, that's, and some will say 60. That the Shaykhuha begins at 60. But he was at the peak of his career, intellectually, financially, socially. Kings wanted his company. All of the ulama admitted that he was the best scholar of the time. He could win any argument. He literally could beat anybody in dialectics, because he'd studied jadal to an extreme degree. So he knew all the ways to argue. He was very arrogant by his own admission. But he also said that he realized that what he was doing, he was teaching because he wanted stature, he wanted praise, he wanted the jah. And the Prophet warned us about jah and mal. He said that these are more dangerous for the religion of a person than a wolf in the midst, a hungry wolf in the midst of sheep. Al-mal wal-jah. And jah is stature, prestige. This is what stops many people in the United States from speaking out about the Palestinian issue. Many people in the US, they know they've got careers, they're in CNN, they're in all these news agencies, or they're in academia, and they know that it's a death sentence for their careers. So jah is more important to them than haqq, than truth. Chris Hedges is a good example of somebody who's completely destroyed his career and reputation. Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. Now he's a pariah in that community. They won't put him on TV anymore. Why? Because he speaks out against the injustices in Palestine. So that's jah. That's what jah does. It prevents you from speaking the truth. And this controls many, many people. This concern about what other people think. So I was telling one of my sons that he shouldn't care about what other people think. And he quoted to me David Foster Wallace, who said, "You'll stop worrying about what other people think about you when you realize how little they do think about you." So he goes into this crisis, and he said, one day I put a foot forward, the next day I pulled it back, and he was thinking, I really have to do something. And he felt like he was literally on the verge of destruction. So he was really going into a serious crisis. And what happens is he loses the ability to speak. Literally, he couldn't speak. What's amazing about that, he says, he shows up. I mean, imagine me tonight coming, and I can't speak. I just look out there and I can't speak. And you guys are all like, what's wrong with him? What's going on? What's up? He couldn't do it. And he's got all these students looking at him. And he's trying to talk and he couldn't do it. He said, God solved the problem for me. He took away the very thing that put him on the top. And suddenly he was on the bottom. And at that point, the doctors say, this is a psychological problem. We treat the body, we can't solve this. So who were the psychologists of that time? These were the atibba and nafsaniyun. Who were they? They were the people of tazkiyah. And so he realized that's what he needed to do. And so he puts his family in a good situation, and he literally sets out on a pilgrimage and becomes a salik. He goes to Damascus. He literally lived in and there's the minaret, there's a room where he studied that's still known in the Umayyad Masjid as Ghazali's room. And that's where he did his tazkiyah. He said knowledge was easier for me than action. But he realized that the people of tazkiyah are not people of aqwal, they're people of ahwal. They're not people of words, they're people of states. And this is the beginning. And this is when he begins to write the Ihya Ulum ad-Din. And that's why the most important book in the Ihya Ulum ad-Din is the first book. Because all of the other books are predicated on that, understanding that first book. And what he does in that first book is he really identifies what knowledge is. So what I want to do just before that is give you a model. It comes out of, it's an ancient model. And in the Western tradition, it's called the Wheel of Fortune. And the most important source for this is from one of the most important books of the classical world, which was the Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. Has anybody read that in here? The Consolation of Philosophy, Boethius. Boethius was a Roman consul, brilliant man, and he entered into politics even though he was a philosopher. He was a Christian. He was a philosopher. He was born in the mid 5th century Christian era and dies in the early 6th century of the Christian era. Anyway, he felt compelled to go into politics because he took very serious Plato's words that the world will not be rectified until philosophers become kings or kings become philosophers. And so he felt it was a duty because the world was in such a shambles. This was a very difficult period in history for many areas in the world. But he went into politics and he becomes very, very popular. He was brilliant. He had everything. He came from humble beginnings. Very simple background, but he literally became beloved. He became very close to the ruler. Everybody looked up to him. But then there was a fitna between the Eastern Church and the Western Church, and he got involved in it. And the next thing he knows, he finds himself in prison, sentenced to death. So he was literally on the top, suddenly he's on the bottom, and he writes, in prison, he writes this book, the Consolation of Philosophy. And in the book, philosophy comes personified as a beautiful woman, and he's there grieving and feeling self-pity and sorry for himself, and philosophy comes and says, you studied all these high things, and now look at you, you're pathetic. And then begins to explain to him. And anyway, chapter 2 deals with this model. And so I want to just look at this model. I think it's a very useful model. But let me just read you a little section. So perhaps the hallmark of the medieval worldview is this story of the Wheel of Fortune. And C.S. Lewis was of the opinion that it was one of the most influential books ever written in Latin. He thought that to acquire a taste for it was to almost become naturalized into the Middle Ages. At the heart of this naturalization lies the myth of fortune that challenges the modern myth of progress. Lewis was hostile to progress because he did not find it a comforting myth, but a cruel one. He proposes the myth of fortune as a defense against the progressive view, common to vulgar pagans and to vulgar Christians alike, which comforts cruel men by interpreting variations of human prosperity as divine rewards and punishments. You see, one of the things like Africans, because they're poor, people really don't care about Africa. And in the bottom, it's because of this myth. And this is a Protestant sickness, but it's also found amongst the Muslims. This idea that somehow that if you're graced with wealth, it's because God's obviously pleased with you, because if he's impoverished you and put you in a bad condition, well, gee, that must be because he doesn't like you. Because if I like people, I like to give them things. And if I don't like them, I like to withhold things from them. This is the way that people think. And so this Protestant idea that wealth is a sign of God's grace. Therefore, the Americans are obviously the most graced people on earth, and God loves them because they're the wealthiest country on earth. And obviously the Palestinians, look at the Israelis. They have everything. The Palestinians don't have anything. Therefore, they're obviously chosen. God's chosen them over these pathetic Palestinians that can't do anything for themselves. So what he's saying is it's a cruel myth because it convinces the oppressor, who often misuses his power that he's been given, that somehow he's divinely sanctioned to do so, and that he can do what he wants with impunity, and he always wears the white hat, the myth of the good guys. I mean, this is one of the great myths of my culture, if you're from Australia or England or any of the European countries, this is a myth that we're always right. The Eurocentric worldview, that other peoples don't seem to count, that when we go into India and colonize it, this is the British idea, when we go into India and colonize it, we're doing it for their own good. These are backward people. And isn't it interesting that when Christianity was the dominant ideology in Europe, they needed to spread this wonderful Christianity and remove these backward religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. So that was their impulse then, always with the commercial agents alongside the missionaries, right? So let's spread Christianity because they're so ignorant. Now that they've gotten rid of Christianity, they've convinced themselves that, oh, these backward fascistic Muslims and these despotic Asiatics, we need to bring them liberal democracy because this is obviously the most superior form of government because it's our form of government. And these horrible Gulf Arabs, look at these terrible sheikhs that control their people. Look at these poor women. Our women are so liberated. Just look at Las Vegas, right? And look at these poor women in bags walking around, right? And then they tell you, don't let the sun get near your skin because it's going to give you skin cancer. I mean, if you go to a Saudi Arabian lady, she's like 80 years old. She's had her face covered her whole life. Her skin's like porcelain. Right? People that know this, that have been there, right? And you're saying, how does the sheikh know what's behind the veil? My wife told me. They don't need all these creams that they pay millions of dollars for. They just keep that face thing on and they never get the sun. So they don't get wrinkles. I'm not making a case for the face veil. It's an urf, you know. I mean, there's some people that argue that it's sunnah, but it's a stronger opinion, it's urf of a people. If it's their urf, that's fine. If it's not their urf, then... But that, you know, this is the Eurocentric view. You know, this is the disease of the people in the West. And it's not about color. Don't think it's always about color, because the Irish are as white as the moon. And they've had 800 years of Anglo-Saxon hospitality, right? And the Welsh are the Irish that couldn't swim, right? Nabil? Is Nabil here? Is that? Come on, admit it. So, he regarded all notions of progress as forms of social Darwinism. I mean, isn't it interesting? You know, their imam is Darwin. That we're evolving, and obviously the most evolved group of people, according to Samuel Huntington, are the Northern Europeans. Even their skin's the most evolved skin, right? Because we were dark as coal. That's the first people, according to science. Now we're evolving, getting lighter and lighter. So these are real myths that people carry around. So Lewis found the myth of fortune closer to the Christian myth, and I would argue that it's completely Islamic, and I'll show you how it is. In Christianity, they say the sun rises on the evil and the good. In our belief, Allah He provides for the kafir and the mu'min. God sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. In the myth of fortune, human beings find themselves on this inexorably turning wheel. So the 12 o'clock position, is Regno, right? Eisenhower America. Regno, the corresponding emotion that goes with I rule, ahkumu, I'm the hakim, is joy, farah. It's you're happy, you're on top of the world, right? They say, I'm on top of the world. That's 90 degrees, sun's directly overhead, right? But all things must fade, right? The English would like to say the sun never sets on the British Empire. Now it's the most indebted country on the planet, right? Seriously. I mean, look at the English in the pubs. Look, where's the English gentleman? Where are all those ideals? Where's the world of Jane Austen? Seriously, where's all that gone? Right? So rule Britannia rules the waves, rule Britannia. We'll never, never, never be slaves. Well, you're slaves to the IMF. You're slaves to your mortgage brokers, slaves to your lower passions, right? I'm mostly Irish, so I can pick on the Anglo-Saxons a little bit. Regnave is 3 o'clock, khawf. This is, I ruled. This is where America is now. That's why they're so scared, right? We were up here, and now, we're indebted to China. Our GDP, right? Our debt is greater now than our GDP. And they've got the Wall Street guys saying, don't worry, that was the way it was before World War II. Yeah, well, after World War II. Well, after World War II, you were the most industrial country on the planet, producing more goods and services than any other country in the world. Well, we still are, not for long, right? Because basically the number one industry in America that's making the most money for these corporations is making war machines, right? It's not a really good thing to do. The number one entertainment industry in America is pornography. It's surpassed all other forms of entertainment in terms of money production. Not something to be really proud of, right? So that's fear, and that's why there's so much fear. The Time magazine had a cover, are you scared yet? And there's always, all these, fear. Even though Roosevelt said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, now fear is cultivated in America. Barry Sanders' book, The Culture of Fear, right? Is your sink covered with deadly microbes? News at 11. Better watch that. And then obviously it's to sell. What are you doing? I don't want any pictures taken, thanks. So that, right? That's what they do. And that's in order to sell antimicrobials. So now everybody's washing their hands with antimicrobials. The doctors are saying this is a disaster. SubhanAllah, because they've got everybody afraid of germs. No, you need to learn to live, coexist with the germs. Right? Children need to play in the mud, get dirty. Now they're having all these skin problems because children don't play outside anymore. Right? People that are exposed to these things are stronger because their immune system, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But no, it's all fear. So this is the regnabi, fear. Kuntu ahkumu. But then you go down, so there's the sun is fading. Now the sun, it's set. Sum sin regno. I used to rule. I don't have a kingdom anymore. This is where the Muslims were. See, the Muslims were up here. But the wheel of fortune swung. And now we're down here. What's the corresponding emotion? Joy, fear, depression, sorrow, huzn. All these Muslims saying, I'm so depressed. I feel so much grief. Look at our conditions. Because we're down here. We're in Sumsin Regno. We used to rule. أصبحت كنتيا وأصبحت عاجنا وشر خصال المرء كنتي وعاجن. I used to be this and I used to be that. And the worst qualities of a man is the one who says, I used to be this and I used to be that. That's what the Arab poet says. I used to be this, I used to be that. They call it kunti in Arabic. Kuntiyun is a person who's always saying, I used to be this and I used to be that. That's the Muslims. We're kuntiyun. Regnabo, I will rule. India, the BRIC countries, right? Brazil, right? These are the, like China. Yes, China, right? The rising sun, right? And this is what's scaring these guys over here. So the wheel's in spin, right? And you'll see these motifs in literature a lot. You'll even see it in modern popular literature. There's a song from the 60s that was the anthem of the whole 60s protest movement. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, and don't speak too soon, and keep your eyes wide, for the chance won't come again, and don't speak too soon because the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming, and the first one now will be later to win, and the last one now will be later to win, and the loser now will be later to win. The one down here is going to come up here, and the loser now will be later to win for the times there. A more apocalyptic statement, which is where he said, now everything's a little upside down. As a matter of fact, the wheel has stopped. What's good is bad, what's bad is good. You'll find out when you reach the top, you're on the bottom. So this is the motif of the wheel of fortune. Now, right. The lesson of this is that nobody can stay on the top forever. That's what Imam Ghazali learned. He was in a delusional state. And he was given a great gift. And the great gift is to find yourself at the bottom. That's actually a great gift from God. People don't want it, but it's a great gift because a lot of openings come with it. The openings don't come, opportunities come with that regno, because you can do a lot of good, but most people don't. When they're on top, they squander it.